all know a guy who only occasionally shaves for big occasions, and it's because that occasional shave really hurts. It's the time of year for big occasions, and yet there he is, suffering with that cheap drugstore razor. Let's help him out. Henson Shaving's line of razors, built with aerospace precision, deliver a smooth shave your dad, brother, and even son can enjoy, eventually. With replacement blades just 10 cents each, you'll buy it once, and they'll use it for life. How's that for the perfect gift? Celebrate with 100 free blades on your first purchase, and no subscription headaches. HensonShaving.com/holiday.
Hello and welcome to History for Weirdos.
We're your hosts, Andrew
and Stephanie.
And each week, we're going to take you on a journey into the strange, obscure, and relentlessly entertaining corners of human history.
Now listen up, friends, because it's about to get weird. Welcome back, weirdos. You are here with your hosts, Stephanie
and Andrew,
the married couple that likes to sit in their office on the floor and talk to you about weird history stories. We are so excited to be back with another episode this week.
Yes.
Andrew, this time it's your turn.
It is my turn this time. Would you like to hear about the famous, legendary, if you will, Archimedes?
Absolutely.
Yes. I mean, his name alone is pretty excellent.
It would be such a good cat name.
Yeah.
Archimedes is a good cat
name. That
is
a really good cat name.
Mm-hmm.
I think when we do get a cat, his name will be Archimedes.
Or
Pericles.
Yeah, we want to definitely get a cat one day and name one cat Pericles, but maybe we could get two, Pericles and Archimedes.
Yes.
That'd
People will
so
know
cute.
We're history nerds for sure.
People will know to avoid us.
Yeah.
Please go ahead and tell us. Is this like his life story? Or is
Sort
it a specific story?
No, you know what? It's more of like a specific story, but it's kind of a collection of just weird and prolific things that have happened with him.
Okay. So like his greatest hits.
Kind of his greatest hits, and with an emphasis towards the latter part of his life.
Okay.
Where the greatest of his hits occurred.
Damn.
Yeah, and not only that, he lived during a pretty interesting time frame and a very interesting place. So
obviously
we'll get into it.
The name and like rings a bell, and science and inventions and things like that is what I associate with Archimedes,
yes.
But I don't have like any context.
Okay.
So I'm really excited.
I think I can help with that.
Go ahead.
Okay. So today's weirdo highlight, Archimedes, is interesting because he's one of the most prolific, if not the most prolific, mathematician / physicist / engineer / astronomer / inventor of the entire ancient world.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he was a big deal.
He was a multi-passionate.
He was a multi-passionate for sure. And he is, of course, the only Archimedes of Syracuse.
Like the school.
Like the school, yes. Not based in New York, Syracuse, okay. Sicily.
Syracuse, Sicily.
Yes.
Okay.
Which, for the listener, is kind of, I guess, in the southeastern portion of the island.
Nice.
Yes.
So that's where Archimedes is from.
Yeah, that's where Archimedes is from. And at the time, it was a Greek colony of the city-state of Corinth.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So then, it doesn't sound really Italian, so Syracuse probably a Greek name?
Yeah, I think so. It comes from a Greek name. I don't know what the Greek word is, but that's like the anglicized version of it.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah. So he lived during the 3rd century BC. So the 200s BC.
Mm-hmm.
He was an ethnic Greek, again, like I mentioned, from the city-state of Syracuse, and again, southeastern portion of the island of Sicily. Just for any geography nerds we have out there.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Geography nerds.
I am a geography nerd too, so that's why I keep on mentioning it. I also realize that most people probably aren't, so it just sounds weird that I'm just repeating that. So, and like I mentioned, and I have to repeat myself here, this was a very interesting time, and he also happened to be in a very interesting place in a very interesting time in world history, or especially the history of the Mediterranean.
Tell us why.
So Sicily is essentially the midpoint of the entire Mediterranean. North, south, east, west. They call kind of Sicily smack dab right in the middle.
Yeah.
which means, it doesn't really mean a whole lot today, but in the ancient world, when trade and commerce was conducted over the seas in wooden ships, this was very important because, all the shipping lanes went right through there, right?
Yeah.
And so, essentially what that meant was a lot of wealth, would be funneled through there, either through, gold, silver, precious metals, or through like the various, trades that would come through. And so, and also like during this time frame, there was a lot of wars that were happening, and they all went through Sicily. So the three that come to mind immediately, this was just during his life alone, was the Pyrrhic War, the first Punic War, and then the second Punic War.
Oh, wow.
So a lot happened.
So he would have, and the people of Sicily at that time would have been exposed to so much because of the trade and the warfare going on all around them all the time.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, different armies from various parts of the world.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, to give you guys a kind of a full context, and I'm going to keep this very brief, I will give a short summary of kind of what's happening, with Rome and Carthage, as those are becoming the two biggest players of the Mediterranean at the time.
Okay.
And then, of course, they set the stage for the Punic Wars.
Okay.
Rome versus Carthage. So Rome at this point in time, they had, most people think of Rome, they think of, Augustus, Julius Caesar, and even later on, like, Marcus Aurelius. That's still hundreds of years away.
Yeah.
So at this point in time, Rome had finally broken away from being like a kind of like a minor city state in central Italy to becoming the dominant player in Italy. And when I say Italy, like, I mean mainland Italy. And so during his life, they fought in the Pyrrhic War, right? So essentially a Greek army came and they fought Rome in southern Greece.
In Sicily?
In southern Italy, and then eventually in Sicily as well. And then ironically, the Carthaginians were involved as well, but not fighting against Rome. And there's just a lot of fighting, and it just all took place in Sicily.
And Archimedes is just chilling.
And Sicily, and Syracuse, the city state, is kind of just chilling. They're like, they don't want to get caught in the middle of it,
right? And they
just are. And so then, at least for them, luckily, the Pyrrhic War is pretty quick.
Okay, so that's Pyrrhic and then Punic.
And then Punic, yeah, they're two separate things.
Okay, and there's two Punic Wars.
And
one Pyrrhic beforehand.
Yes. Thank you, yeah. And the word Pyrrhic comes from the king of this kingdom called Epirus, and his name was Pyrrhus.
Okay.
So Pyrrhic War.
So his war, basically.
Yeah, his war.
Okay.
And I can go into the whole backstory of that, but I feel like that's way too much for this episode.
Yeah, please don't.
Yeah, I will not. And so then, the Punic Wars happen, and that's Rome, that kind of, they're just starting to become like an empire, right? They have it by the time of the first Punic War, they have all of Italy pretty much conquered, right?
Which is a big deal.
Which is a really big deal. And then south of Sicily in North Africa, present day, like just outside of Tunis, Tunisia, is the city-state of Carthage, which it was a colony itself of a Phoenician colony of Tyre, which is in present-day Lebanon in the Eastern Mediterranean. And they were becoming an empire themselves.
Okay.
And so, they kind of, two really growing empires.
Growing.
Yeah. And Sicily and Syracuse is right in the middle of both of them. So they're like,
they're
this
sweating.
is great. This is great. And they're fighting each other. War breaks out between them, and the first Punic War happens. And that lasts I don't remember at the top of my head, but it's something like 23, 24 years.
Oh my God.
It's a long time, and a lot of people die.
Yeah.
Primarily it was fought. Yeah, it's a whole generation. Primarily it was fought over the seas, but there were some land battles. It was just chaos. And then the second Punic War happens later on. That's the more famous of the two wars.
Okay.
That's the one that has Hannibal, infamously crossing the Alps. That was towards the beginning of the second Punic War.
Did he do that with elephants?
He did do it with elephants.
That's not smart.
No, only, and this is a fun fact, not so fun fact actually, only one elephant survived the winter.
What? A son of a nutcracker.
Yeah.
That's terrible.
So, like,
who would think an elephant would survive?
I know. So he brought all these elephants across the mountains, and then they mostly die. It's like only one of them survived. So like it was kind of silly. It was pointless, and these poor animals died.
Rest
I hate
in peace,
that.
Elephants.
I know. And even not less of a fun fact, that was a subspecies of elephant that was present in North Africa that is now extinct. Completely extinct. Yeah.
Oh my God. So
yeah,
we're just talking about
on a huge tangent right now, but
so
interesting.
That's all during the Second Punic War.
Yeah.
Involving Hannibal.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so he's important for, kind of the story, but there's a lot of things that are important. But yeah, that's kind of, and the reason why I wanted to tell this is because to give you a little bit of an idea of, it's just the world is in chaos right now.
Yeah.
This was if you think about it, this was the closest thing they had to a world war in like the ancient era.
Oh, absolutely. For the people of the Mediterranean, this must have been a world war.
Absolutely.
Their known world.
And in the Second Punic War, especially, there were 5 theaters of war. You had fighting in Spain, you had fighting in mainland Italy, you had fighting in Sicily, you had fighting in Greece, and you had fighting in North Africa.
Oh my
God. It was brutal, and it lasted I think 16, 17 years. So again, this was after the First Punic War, which lasted over 20 years.
Which is after the Pyrrhic War.
Yeah, which was at least short, but it was still devastating.
Lots of war.
Okay. And Syracuse and the entire island of Sicily is right smack dab in the middle of it. So just chaos.
Okay.
So, now that we have kind of all that backstory out of the way, I wanted to bring it back to our weirdo Archimedes.
Yay!
Yes. So, what's sad is, and strange is that we know very little about the man himself.
Oh.
Interesting enough, he did have a biography written about him by his friend Heraclides, but unfortunately it was lost to time.
Oh my God, his friend wrote a biography.
His friend wrote a biography, yeah. We know that, but we don't know what he wrote.
He must have been really interesting for a contemporary to be like, oh, I have to write about your life.
Yeah, I think reading about him, the little that we know is fascinating.
Okay.
And going kind of to how little we know, we don't even know if he was ever married or if he had children.
Really?
Nothing of his private life or personal life. The things that we do know from him are his inventions, his theories, and a few possibly apocryphal stories. So, and again, that's with ancient history, a lot of these things, it's kind of we don't really know for certain if this happened or if it didn't happen. It's a lot of it's kind of just guesswork.
Absolutely.
So he was written about by numerous ancient historians across the centuries. I mean, starting with the Greco-Roman Polybius in the 2nd century BC. Then you had the Roman author Vitruvius, Roman statesman Cicero, the Roman historian Livy, the Greek philosopher Livy, that Livy, the history of Rome, Livy. The Greek philosopher Plutarch, and then the Byzantine Roman John Tzetzes from the 12th century AD. So
John Tzetzes?
Yeah, it's spelled Tzezes. Okay. Wow. I just love the evolution of Roman, quote unquote, Roman names.
Yeah.
It's really funny. But one of my favorite, I think, of these possibly false stories is when Archimedes helped his benefactor, the king of Syracuse, Hiero II.
Okay.
And, and as a side note, I would just want to mention that we could probably do an entire episode on Hiero II.
Oh, wow.
But just for the interest in time, and so I don't go, down a crazy rabbit hole, just know that he ruled over the city-state of Syracuse for a very long time. He was involved in the Pyrrhic War. I think he was a general of, and I don't know this for certain, but I think he was a general of the king of Epirus, Pyrrhus, and probably one of his top generals.
Okay, and that's how he ended up getting Syracuse.
Right, exactly. And we do know that, he, in the First Punic War, he briefly supported the Carthaginians, but switched sides to the Romans and became a staunch supporter of the Romans for the rest of his life.
Wow, that's so interesting.
Yeah. I think he was, from what I've read about him and what I've studied about him, is he was a just an incredibly intelligent person, and he could see, patterns, and he saw this, this Rome, that was looked down upon by the Greeks at the time, right? As they were viewed as barbarians, but he saw them and he's like, oh no, these guys are going to be a big deal in the coming years.
He saw their potential.
And
Rome did some cool things,
Rome,
I guess.
Yeah, Rome did some great things, in terms of,
conquering.
grandness. Yeah, conquering. Yeah. But okay, so back to the story of Hiero. So he suspected that his goldsmith was leaving out some measure of gold and replacing with silver in a wreath that was dedicated to the gods.
Okay.
Sacrilegious, of course.
No, of course.
Archimedes accepts the challenge of, figuring this out, and during a subsequent trip to the public baths, realized that the more his body sinks into the water, the more water is displaced, making the displaced water an exact measure of his volume.
Yeah, I remember learning how to do that as like a little kid in school.
Yeah, that's Archimedes. So because gold weighs more than silver, he reasons that a crown mixed with silver would have to be bulkier to reach the same weight as one comprised of only gold.
Okay.
And so therefore it would displace more water than its pure gold counterpart.
Okay.
Because of being heavier. Realizing he has hit upon a solution, the Greek math whiz leaps out of the bath and runs through the streets completely naked, crying, "Eureka, Eureka," or translated, "I found it, I found it."
That's what Eureka means?
Yes, the state motto of California.
That's our state motto?
That is our state motto. Yeah, and that's where, it comes from, like when gold is found in Sutter Mill. Yeah. Or Fort Sumter. No, not Fort Sumter. Sutter Mills, I think. Or
I just know it's like a gold rush term, that when the miners would find gold, they'd yell Eureka.
And that comes from 2,000 years prior, Archimedes.
And it's related to gold.
Yeah, but again, I have to caveat this with saying this is possibly apocryphal. We don't know for certain.
Okay.
But it's a cool story, and I could not tell it.
Yeah, imagine you're so inspired that you just run around your town naked because you gotta go.
Yeah.
Tell someone what you've figured out.
I mean, this dude, he loved, and we'll see it towards the end. Like he just listened, like this was his love in life. I think was like math and science and like everything, like inventing things.
That's so cool.
Yeah, he was a very interesting person. But yeah, and also I have to point out too, is this story is related to the hydrodynamic principle that carries his name, the Archimedes principle.
Oh, snap.
Yeah, so kind of a big deal, and it's still taught to this day.
Yes.
Over 2,000 years later.
Yes, that must be what I learned in school.
Yeah.
I have like the vague memory of learning how to do that, like measure put things in the cup of water, see how much water is displaced.
Right, and that comes from Archimedes. And
that's so cool.
I don't want to bore the listeners with details, but essentially, he figured out that what made things either float or sink. If you're interested, you could Google the mechanics of it. But again, if you're not interested, then don't.
He was brilliant.
He was brilliant. That's kind of the whole point. He was really brilliant.
And a streaker.
And he was brilliant in many aspects. In fact, you can really categorize his works in like three ways. The first is works that prove theorems related to solids and areas bounded by curves and surfaces like spheres and circles. The second is works that analyze problems in statics and hydrostatics from a geometrical viewpoint. And then the third are just kind of miscellaneous works, and including some that emphasize counting. So it's kind of a lot of things.
So not my strong suit.
No, all of these are like not your strong suits. I mean, to be honest, like he could probably, I have the benefit of thousands of years of like learning, and discovery. And he was still way more brilliant, and he could probably explain things better than I could.
Yeah.
Even with like me having Google.
How amazing, folks in the ancient world that figured out these really complex things, to be the first person, for your brain to be that smart, to be, or at least the first recorded person that understands these universal truths.
Yeah, right?
I can't imagine.
I know. I can't either. It's really cool. So in his work on the measurement of a circle, Archimedes arrives at the logical conclusion that the ratio of a circle's circumference to its diameter, the mathematical constant we today call pi, is greater than 3 1/7, but less than 3 10^71, which is a very good approximation.
Wow.
So he knew essentially it was 3.14159, yada, yada, yada. Like well before it was actually ever proved.
That's so
Or
nice.
he could at least have like an idea.
He was very close.
Very close to it. I mean, it was just, it's insane. And I got a list. I have a few things here that I just have to mention just to kind of put in perspective how brilliant he was. So he had a lot of work on like pulley and lever systems. And they were so advanced that there wouldn't be greater improvements on them for roughly 1700 years.
Wow.
And that's not all. He additionally theorized modern calculus about 1800 years before Isaac Newton. No big deal.
Who we also covered.
Who we did cover
in another episode.
He probably looked
of
up to
History
Archimedes.
For Weirdos.
I know.
Yes, go listen.
Go listen to that now.
Oh, wow. Can you imagine being smart enough to theorize calculus?
Right. He's like, he didn't understand it completely, but he theorized that it exists.
I wasn't even smart enough to take pre-calculus in high school.
It's just not your strength. That's all.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's just not your strength. So
thank you for repeating that for everyone.
No, I know, but it's like no. Okay, moving on. Anyways, and then finally, he may have invented. We don't know for certain, but we may have invented that or something that is now known as the Archimedes screw, which allows water to be pumped from a low-lying body of water upwards. It is still used to this day, well over 2,000 years later.
Like when there's like a reservoir underground and they use those giant screws.
Yes.
To pull the water up.
Yes.
Oh, he invented that?
He invented that possibly. Like there were some of these used roughly around the same time in Egypt.
Oh, wow.
And Egypt, ironically enough, was like kind of like Alexandria specifically was like the center of Hellenistic thought.
Yeah.
And so, it could have possibly originated from there or him, but the work is largely attributed
or both.
to him. It could have been, even
sometimes that happens
simultaneously. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's possible. But yeah, if you want to learn more, they have really good, I think even Wikipedia has a really good like animation of how it works. So you can
that's
just
so
Google
cool.
It. Yeah, it's really cool. But there's still cooler things. More insane things.
Oh, tell me.
And this is in regards to like the Romans and the war, the Second Punic War. So I have to give just a teeny bit more backstory, and I promise I'm going to keep this brief.
Okay.
But, remember that king I mentioned, Hiero?
Yep.
Yeah.
He's the king of Syracuse.
So, yeah, remember, he's a very staunch Roman supporter, right?
Yeah, and he's real smart.
Real smart. Well, he died. I mean, he was super old. Yeah. He died. And again, midst of the Second Punic War, so just shit is going down.
Yeah.
His successor though was not as intelligent as he was.
It always happens.
And the kingdom switched alliances to those are the Carthaginians.
Oh, okay.
So
that's a huge change to make, like in the middle of everything.
Yeah. Unsurprisingly, this angered the Romans, and they started to siege the city. Not very smart that and the reason why, just a little bit of backstory, is the Romans suffered a massive defeat like in mainland Italy, and they thought like, oh, that was the end of the war. They very, very underestimated the Romans' resolve to like withhold or withstand anything.
Okay.
Especially at this time.
So they were just underestimating them, and then the Romans like kicked their butts.
Pretty much. It took them a little bit of time, but eventually that's kind of where we arrive. So in defense of the city that's now under siege by the Romans because of the new successor's stupidity, Archimedes was called to help defend the city with his brilliance,
with his brain,
and he had two things that are infamous. Two tactics, and we're not even sure, especially one of them, we're not even sure if it was even real or if it was something that was, invented hundreds of years later to say how brilliant he was. We have no idea.
Okay.
But I'll get into it. So the first one is called the claw of Archimedes. And this was a really cool invention. So essentially, it was an ancient weapon designed by Archimedes to defend the seaward portion of Syracuse's city wall against an amphibious assault. So
amphibious assault, like a water assault?
A water assault,
I've
right.
never
So
heard
like
that term.
ships, they had a big wall essentially that was right on the water. And the Roman ships, were trying to, I don't know what their strategy was, but they were trying to like breach that section. Again, that's not super important. What is important is the accounts of ancient historians. They seem to describe this claw as a crane, like a sort of crane that is equipped with a grappling hook that was able to lift an attacking ship partly out of the water and then either cause the ship to capsize or suddenly drop it. So and then
oh my god, like the claw machines at like Denny's and the arcade and stuff.
But like massive and going over the wall and picking up ships out of the water, then causing them to like fall back down and like capsize or like break.
That's what happens when you try to pick up the toy. You always drop it.
Yeah. And that was by design this time. And it was dropped onto enemy ships, which then the enemy ships would swing and destroy the ship, right? And sometimes they would get swung into other ships.
Oh my god.
And it was just bad news bears for the Roman ships.
Yeah.
It was very effective. And
I
apparently
can imagine.
just like almost like annihilated a portion of the Navy.
Oh my god.
Yeah, it was
really
bad.
No one would have guessed that would be waiting for them.
Right? How insane is that?
A giant claw coming over the wall was going to pick us up.
Yeah.
And fling us back into the water.
Fling us back or drop us on another ship or whatever.
Wow. Archimedes' claw, pretty badass.
Yeah, the claw of Archimedes. That just sounds so foreboding. But here's what's crazy. The second invention was even stranger. I don't even know how to describe it, so I just characterized it as a heat death ray.
Okay.
Not making this up. History is truly stranger than fiction at times.
Absolutely. That's why we have this podcast.
That's why we have this podcast. I feel like this podcast was made for like this alone. He used a series of mirrors and created this death ray.
Okay.
So you know how you use kind of like a spying or looking glass to like burn the ants in the anthill?
I never did that, but yeah.
Right.
Always in the movies.
It's always in the movies. I never did that either. I'm not a sociopath, people.
But yeah, the magnifying glass to magnify the sun's rays.
Think of that same principle. So apparently they used a bunch of mirrors on the coast, right? And when the Roman ships were coming in, the sun would hit the mirrors and they would focus all the mirrors on a singular point, right? So like all the beams would kind of come in ideally on one single point, and that point would then burst into flames.
Yeah. Oh my god.
And so, according to these ancient sources, this worked.
I bet it could, like, if you know exactly. I mean, the ships would have to arrive at the right time, right? The sun would have to be in the right position,
right? Absolutely.
But I can like visualize it so clearly. Yeah. Like the sun hits the mirrors make a beam and hit the thing, and there's fire. Yeah, it's kind of like even like when you're driving and I'm looking at my phone. Oh my god! But it's the wrong time of day because then the sun hits my phone and like burns your eyes.
Yeah, it goes like right in my eye.
I'm in the passenger seat. Yeah.
I was like, you're trying to like blind me, woman.
Yeah.
Yeah. But obviously the story is so absurd, like there's going to be critics, right?
Of course.
There's been a lot of debate on the validity of the story, unsurprisingly. So, funny enough though, this was actually even tested on Mythbusters.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I know. Imagine telling Archimedes like 20, he lived over 2,200 years ago, being like, hey, by the way, there's this television show that will, go over this invention of yours and see if it's even real or not.
Oh my god, what were the results?
They were mixed. They were varied.
Really?
Based on numerous experiments. But there is a possibility it could have worked.
Mm-hmm.
The conditions would have had to have been like near perfect.
Yeah.
But it could have worked.
Yeah.
One thing that I also feel like I should mention is that tar was used in a lot of ancient ships. And, since it is flammable, potentially, boom, goes the dynamite, right?
Yeah.
Or, bursts into flames.
Yeah.
So it's possible.
That's so cool.
Despite how fantastical it sounds, right? So it's kind of amazing.
That's very ingenious, and you don't risk human life.
Right, yeah. Like,
you don't need more soldiers for this. You just need people maybe to hold up the mirrors.
I don't know. The mirrors, and it's, well out of range from any sort of arrows or something that the Romans could, because they're also higher up too.
Exactly,
so they're
on
beaming
a cliff.
down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're on a cliff. So the Mythbusters did conclude, however, that it just would have been a lot easier to use flaming arrows instead. So, the debate kind of still rages on if this was actually true or not.
Okay.
Yeah. So despite his brilliance, the might and persistence of the Roman military won the day, and, they eventually broke through the city's defenses.
Oh, that sucks. I was kind of expecting that. But it sucks because you would hope that like the kooky creative genius would save the day. City.
Yeah. He didn't.
Okay.
And it gets worse. And as a result of this though, in the confusion, he died despite commands coming from the Roman consuls, which were the highest position in the Roman government, that Archimedes was not only to like not be killed, but to not be harmed. They wanted to, invite him, essentially be like their prisoner, their really well taken care of prisoner, and like do things for the Romans.
Yeah, they wanted his brilliance.
Yeah, they wanted his brilliance for themselves.
That's amazing they even knew about him.
Yeah, like he was that famous. But, that's not the way it happened, unfortunately. Wow. And the way he died was very Archimedes-like.
How so?
So, this is especially, to be believed, the story is to be believed as, we believe the bathtub story.
Okay.
So the story goes something like this. And again, the sources vary as to exactly how it happened. But the gist is Roman soldiers burst into Archimedes' house, and he was either sitting in his garden or a peristyle, drawing in the sand.
Oh.
Literally drawing in the sand.
Uh-huh.
One of the Roman soldiers stepped onto the circles he had drawn in the sand, and this very much so upset Archimedes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was probably working really hard on those circles.
He was. He purportedly exclaimed, and I'm going to do my best Latin here.
Oh, snap. I'm ready.
Noli turbare curriculos meos, or meos.
Okay, let me guess what that means. Say it again.
Noli turbare curriculos meos.
Don't mess up my circles?
Yes.
Really?
Yes. Do not disturb my circles. That's really good.
I'm so smart.
See, those are your strengths. Yeah, there we go.
We found them.
Or it was inside you all along.
All along.
But for one reason or another, that soldier ended up killing him, sadly enough.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Just over that?
Over that. Yeah, he's probably...
Do you think the soldier, and I know we don't know, but what do you think? Do you think the soldier was like, I'm going to go get this Archimedes dude. I was told I got to go pick him up, bring him back. And then Archimedes pissed him off and he killed him? Or do you think he was just raiding a house?
He might have been searching for Archimedes, and then, maybe in the heat of the moment, this guy was pushing the soldier, and the guy just, snapped and just slashed him or something, or stabbed him.
A murder of passion.
Right. Like he wasn't trying to.
With the adrenaline of war and everything.
And especially how kooky Archimedes is, he could have just lost it when and to a normal person, stepping in some drawings on the sand isn't going to really...
Yeah, but he was brilliant. It must have meant so much more.
Right. He'd probably been working on them, and and he didn't have calculators, so he's probably doing calculations in the sand, and this guy just maybe ruined years, or maybe not years, hours of work, and that probably just pissed him off.
Yo, he didn't have calculators.
So, and I wrote this in my notes, but it was at least Archimedes died doing what he loved, I suppose.
He was doing calculations and defending his work. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
it's honorable.
It's an honorable. And in like, anyways, the consul that was in charge of this invasion, apparently personally apologized to like the family or like the people of Syracuse, because he was very upset. Like everyone was very upset that this guy died.
Wow.
And so even the Romans.
I'm so amazed, because it does sound like he was odd, like a true weirdo. I'm amazed that he was so admired for his time, because usually the stories we hear and a lot of the stories we end up telling on this show are people who are ahead of their time in some way, whether it's the like social justice rights they're fighting for, their brilliance, their art, their anything. The people of their time tend to not recognize it. It's so interesting to me that people recognized it.
Because a lot the practical applications of his work could be like, oh, you can pull water upwards, which you can pump water upwards, which is completely new thing, and also siege weapons. And Romans
loved war.
They like no more so than like probably most other civilizations at the time, but they were really good at it. And
definitely not more than the United States government.
That's a conversation for another time. Yeah.
Wow. So the consul came and was like, guys, I'm so sorry.
Like, I'm so sorry we killed him. Our bad. But apparently he was buried in a very extravagant tomb with a sphere and sphere and cylinder structures at the front. Oh. Yeah. The monuments that he loved the most, right? Adorned his grave, right? And even according to legend, like almost 150 years later, Cicero ended up kind of rediscovering the tomb, and I use like air quotes on that, and paid his respects.
Is it still there today?
It's probably lost. Like the tomb of Alexander is just, we don't.
Like generally people know like, oh, it should be around here.
Yeah, but we don't know.
Oh, that's such a bummer.
Yeah, it is. It's a big time bummer.
I want to go to Syracuse, Sicily now.
I do too. I mean, there's so much that happened there. I mean, I only covered a little, like a sliver of the history, right? A sliver of a sliver, but there's a lot that happened there. It was really important place.
What a fascinating and ancient culture.
Yeah.
Like, it's so crazy. And from what I know of, and your grandfather is Sicilian, and what I know of like Sicilian people that I've met and stuff like that, their roots tend to go back many generations to Sicily. It seems like it's Italy, of course, and it's Italian, but it does seem like it's its own subculture, its own special.
Oh, it absolutely is. And
it's
funny you mention it being Italian, and it is like it's part of the the contemporary nation state of Italy, right? Mm-hmm. But in ancient times it was not Italian.
Yeah,
it was completely different.
Yeah.
Like, which is interesting to think about.
Yeah, and obviously probably such a hodgepodge of all of the cultures that were trading and warring all around them.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it was the Romans' first overseas conquest.
Aww.
Everyone
so remembers their first overseas conquest.
So cute. So cute. Yeah, so cute. Well, and before I forget, I'm going to cite my sources so no one can make fun of me. You guys can't make fun of me, and you can't make fun of me, Steph.
It's about time.
Yeah.
You gotta cite them at the top.
I know. At least I'm citing them regardless.
Yes.
So,
tell us where you learned this awesome information for folks that might want to learn more.
Absolutely. So we have Encyclopedia Britannica.
That's so good.
It's a great one. The Scientific American.
Oh, that sounds fancy.
It's very fancy. The World History Encyclopedia.
Wow.
Hellenica World.
Hellenica World. I've never heard of that.
Yeah, I haven't either, actually, up until this point. And then finally, my favorite, the one we use all the time.
Wikipedia.
You got it.
Yeah.
You can't have a History for Weirdos episode without a little Wikipedia.
No, it's true. It's the filler.
It is the filler.
It's the basic definitions. It's the dates that we need real quick.
Right.
It's our rock.
It is.
Oh, wow. So you gave me exactly what I wanted, which was so much more context into who Archimedes, like why he was important.
Right.
Like I knew, like I said, scientific awesomeness
exactly
is associated with this dude, but I didn't know why.
Yeah. And I mean, how just so much far ahead of everyone else. Like, I mean, he was clearly just a man. I would have loved if he could have met like someone like Leonardo da Vinci, right? Like,
would have had such a good time.
Especially, assuming they could speak to each other.
Okay, yeah.
Right. But like, assuming they could, like, oh my God, probably really interesting conversations
Could
there.
you imagine where if those two had been contemporaries and could communicate, where the world would be?
It would be, I can't even imagine. And it's insane too, because there's some of the people that literally the world technology is they were hampered by, they were so far ahead that the technology of the time was literally hampering their progress.
It's almost like they were born at the wrong time.
Yeah.
And maybe they're reborn again later. I just can't imagine being so obviously far ahead of everyone else, seeing and imagining and creating things that other people in my time can't even wrap their head around.
Right.
How cool.
It's so cool. Man, but that is the legendary Archimedes. I hope you enjoyed it.
Yay!
Snap, 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 snap. Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you so much for sharing more about Archimedes with me, with the weirdos. We loved it. We're here for it. And for all of you listening, thank you as always so much for listening. Please feel free to email us if you have any requests. You want to say hi at historyforweirdos@gmail.com. We're on Instagram at historyforweirdos. Please do us such a solid and rate, review, subscribe. I know everyone says that, but it's for a reason. It helps other people find the podcast. It also gives us really good feedback. So we can keep making episodes. And that's it.
That's it. Yeah. And also, if you like this episode or if you liked any other episodes, give the details to some other weirdos that you think would like it.
Yeah, just in the podcast app, at least for iPhones, you can share an episode with someone via text.
Oh, I actually didn't know that. It's pretty cool.
I send you podcast episodes all the time.
Oh, you have? Just kidding. I didn't know that.
Yeah, so please feel free to share with a friend if you think someone might enjoy this. We're always looking to expand the community.
Absolutely. Okay, well, for now, that's all, weirdos.
That's all for now, weirdos.
We all know a guy who only occasionally shaves for big occasions, and it's because that occasional shave really hurts. It's the time of year for big occasions, and yet there he is, suffering with that cheap drugstore razor. Let's help him out. Henson Shaving's line of razors, built with aerospace precision, deliver a smooth shave your dad, brother, and even son can enjoy, eventually. With replacement blades just 10 cents each, you'll buy it once, and they'll use it for life. How's that for the perfect gift? Celebrate with 100 free blades on your first purchase, and no subscription headaches. HensonShaving.com/holiday.
It's important to properly dispose of unwanted medication or sharps. MedProject offers free and convenient disposal options near you. To learn more, call 844-MED-PROJECT or visit medproject.org.